Hello again, everybody. This is Dan Clouser, and welcome back to the Journey of My Mother's Son podcast. Today, Sandy and I are going to give a little recap of our travels from April 16th to May 15th. Last time we talked to you, we were in Lake Havasu, Arizona. We left Lake Havasu and entered California for the first time and made our way to Joshua Tree, which was an absolutely beautiful national park.
It was great.
Just incredible landscape. We were actually there for 3 nights in 2 different campgrounds in Joshua Tree.
And it was dry dock.
Yeah,
right?
there was no hookups. Sites were not exactly level.
Well, at least the ones
it all
we
worked
were.
out.
Yeah.
But took a hike. I mean, just beautiful scenery. We started in Black Rock Campground, and then drove south to the other end of the park, and just again. The scenery in Joshua Tree, the way it changes over the hills.
And what was neat, the flowers are starting to bloom on the cactus.
Yeah.
Which was really cool.
Yeah, it was just an amazing experience.
And you don't think cactuses get flowers, but there's flowers out there, everyone.
Yeah, cactuses are pretty beautiful when they bloom, for sure.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, just an incredible national park. If you haven't been there, I definitely recommend putting it on your bucket list, because the changes in ecosystems and scenery is just incredible. Every hill that you go over, there's just something new to behold. So just totally awesome.
And I can't even describe what a Joshua tree looks like, but they are unique.
Yeah, very cool. So after our couple days in Joshua Tree, we started to make our way to our volunteer project in California. We made a couple stops in some Harvest Hosts. The first was in Amboy at a Harvest Host Roy's Motel and Cafe. Just a little spot along Old Historic 66. Stayed there for a night.
And they're not like back in the day, back in the 50s, they had like food there, and you could stay in the motels. They're trying to redo so that it comes back to that, because at this point it's just a gas station that's open with like snacks and stuff inside.
A little convenience store. So from there we left. We took a quick stop at the Amboy Crater, which was pretty neat, and then made our way up to another Harvest Host called Peggy Stu's 50s Diner, which
that was cool.
Very cool.
It's cool.
Food was good. And it
had homemade pies and things like that. So.
And it was, at that point, it was really starting to get hot. We'd been in the desert for a couple days. Joshua Tree was actually pretty nice for the most part. But Amboy and Peggy Sue's was pretty warm. From there, we made our way to Paris, California to do our volunteer project with our friends at the Southern California Railway Museum, which was again a cool spot if you're into railroads, or even if you're not into railroads.
It's a nice little park in general, just to picnic at.
Just neat museum, all kinds of history, all kinds of stuff going on there.
That was a 2-week project, so.
Yep. And sadly, we lost our travel companion while we were at that project. When we got there, Youk was...
he was starting to show signs.
Yeah, he was... We initially, I just thought it was the heat. I think we were hoping for the best, because he
never did well with heat.
Yeah, and especially as he got older, he did not like hot weather at all. So we thought maybe... So we'd just gone through 3 days of
severe, really hot heat.
High 80s, low 90s heat.
And we had to have his boots on all the time, because the
pavement was so hot.
The pavement was hot, and plus he was knocking, like there was stones. It wasn't just pavement; it was the stones he had to walk on. So he would end up having his one paw would bleed a little, because his skin as he aged, it was getting thin, and so we had to have the boots on, which made it hotter yet for him. So again, when we got there, we just thought it was the heat, that it was just bothering him. He was kind of lethargic, and that the forecast for the next couple of days after we arrived was for the temperatures to drop and low humidity, and we just thought he would be back to his normal self. And
And the first night we got there, he started to struggle getting up on his own.
He did.
So we'd have to help him up, and
by the second day we knew.
He would struggle getting out of the RV.
And we used his harness the whole time, so we had to. It took two of us to get him up. 2 steps, 3 steps, but.
Yeah, and he was stubborn. There were times I would try to just pick him up and lift him up, and he didn't want to help.
Want no
and there
part
were times
of it.
I'd force it on him and just pick him up and get him inside the RV.
Right.
But he wanted to do his own thing.
Yeah.
So
by Tuesday morning, we knew.
That
we didn't want any more suffering for him. So
he could still walk when he did get up, but when we'd go out to the project and come back, he would just be laying in the same spot.
Yeah. So he wasn't hydrating himself either, so because he couldn't get up to get the water.
To drink. So when he did get up, he drank a lot. So we would just make more visits back to the RV during the day, during the project, to get him, to keep him drinking.
And at that point,
but when we saw that he couldn't move around on his own when we weren't there, that was really kind of the telltale sign. If he couldn't get up to get a drink.
He was always a muscular dog, and you could see his muscle wasn't there anymore.
Yeah, his back was
the whole
very
thing
bony.
too, through the whole process, he had always ate, and he still was eating really good for us. He didn't stop eating. He was there. He wasn't getting up to pest us for our food sometime, but he still ate his food, and if I had it in front of him, he would eat it.
Yeah, mainly because he couldn't. He just couldn't get up.
Right.
So, come Tuesday, we kind of knew that we had to do something, and one of our friends in the project lived locally, Oren, who I did a podcast with a few years ago. Awesome human being, kind of like a second father to me. I'm always learning stuff from him. But he's also got a golden retriever, so we'd asked him.
He knew what we were going through.
Yeah, because he came up to say hi our first day, and he saw how Youk was struggling to get in. So as soon as we went up to him and asked, hey, where do you take Lucy to the vet? He knew why we were asking. So he started to make some calls for us, and initially we were thinking we could make it to the weekend because we didn't want to disrupt the project. We were there to help.
Right. But everyone there a lot of people had dogs there too, so they understood, and they were a lot of comfort for us.
Yeah, very supportive. So, we were still kind of planning on, Saturday we would make that trip between weeks of the project, and then Wednesday rolled around, and it was like he had turned the corner. He still couldn't get up on his own, but him and I went out for a little walk in the morning, and boy, he had all kinds of energy and was just moving about and barking and saying hi to everybody.
He had a sprint in his step, for sure.
Yeah, he, normally while we were at the project, we would go up, there was a little grass area, and we'd kind of just walk around one time and come back to the RV for him to go potty. And
I think that's all he looked for, was that green grass.
Yeah, and he that morning we walked around that grassy area and around the buildings up there probably 3 or 4 times, and but his left paw had started to swell up in his leg. So even though he had this energy and kind of seemed like he was back to his old self, I knew there was something else going on. And even as we went through our breakfast routine that morning, he was begging and wanting, he was moving around and doing his thing, like he always had. So, I think it gave us some false hope, so to speak, at least for me. And then when we went out to do our project, we came back about mid-morning, and again, he was laying in the same spot that he had been when we left, so we knew, again, he couldn't get up, and then the swelling in that paw and leg was a concern, and then it looked like that swelling had gone down a little bit, but then it looked like his right paw was starting to swell up. Certainly not as big as the left, but was starting to swell. So again, that's when we kind of knew. And
we made the call.
Yeah,
to a VCA.
Oren had already told Sandy that there was a place that could get us in that day, but that was earlier in the day before we actually thought that we were going to be doing this. But when we got back from that break, we knew. And I just kind of laid on the floor with him and cried a little bit. Because you want them to tell you, and they can't
never
talk
do.
To you, And I think he's trying to tell us in the way that they communicate with us, but that's the toughest thing, is they can't just say to you, Mommy and Daddy, I'm ready to go home, And that's the most difficult part about it, is that struggle, especially when you got that burst of energy in the morning. So when we got back at lunch, we started to pack up the RV. A lot of our friends had offered to let us use their vehicles to take them so that we wouldn't have to pack up and unpack again, but we didn't want to do that.
You wanted his last trip in the House on Wheels.
That's right. Him. He had been in the House on Wheels with us for almost 4 years, and I didn't want him to go in some stranger's car for his last ride, so it was important to me, and I think it was important to him.
It was. It was important to me, too.
Be in this spot, to be in a familiar spot for that last trip. And so we got packed up.
I think he knew.
Sandy asked if, she should let him out to go potty, and I said, no, I actually want to drive him up to the grass and
let him out.
Let him do one more walk in that grass. He loved grass, man. He loved grass, and it had been a long time. We'd been in the desert for like a month between Arizona
and it wasn't like
California.
Just any grass. It was the green, soft grass. Yes.
It was good grass. And so we took him up there and we got him out, and you could tell he was loving it. He went potty, and he just kind of walked around and just feeling that grass on his paws. And gentleman came up and started talking to us, making small talk, and Youk went up to him and he started petting him, and the guy said to me, he said, boy, you must have knew I needed to pet a dog today. And at that point, Sandy and I had just lost it, because we knew that was the last stranger he was going to make happy, which actually isn't true. He made strangers at the clinic happy as well. So we loaded them back up in the RV, and we made the trip down to the VCA, and we got there, and Sandy went in first. I
had to fill a form out, and then I called. They said to bring him in, and they would call us back after the vet evaluated him to make sure this was the right decision. So Dan brought him in. There were other dogs in the waiting room, and as you know, he never liked other dogs. He always barked or growled or gruffed or something. He walked in with Dan that day, and there wasn't a sound out of him, like he knew.
Yeah, he knew it was time to pass the baton for somebody else to be top dog for a while.
And they took him back. They evaluated. They told us when they'd be ready. They'd take us back to a room, and then we could spend as much time as we needed with him.
Yeah, so
we did. We were there for a while.
A long time. We
said
were laying there with him and just talking to him and just petting him, telling him how good of a dog he was.
We loved him so much, and to run free.
Yeah. So when we were ready, which we weren't, but we knew we had to be ready, we pressed the button for the vet to come in, and then she came in and kind of explained.
She talked to us and explained everything.
And just talked us through to make sure that we were still
on board,
comfortable with the decision. Which again, we weren't, but it was what we had to do.
She understood. She was they were very good care there.
Yeah. So we sat there and laid with him until he breathed his last breath, and then she said the same thing, to take as much time as we needed before we left. When we did leave, to press the button, and they would take care of the final arrangements.
Yes.
And we went back to the project, and we're greeted with friends, hugs and tears, and just it was a.
It was like he waited
Yeah,
for us to be with our friends.
He knew we needed to be with people to share in that moment and to share in that
grief. He also
grief.
knew that they would be there to give us hugs.
Yeah, support us.
And to support us throughout the whole thing.
Some people want to be alone when stuff like that happens. I mean, we thrive on our friends and our community that we've built. So it was, if there was a good time for this to happen, that was it.
Yeah.
We were in one spot for 2 weeks.
Most of those people he was around prior to that time frame.
Yeah,
so he knew them too.
Some of his biggest fans were there, and they all said their final goodbyes before we had left that day. And it's not easy, but we know that he's running free, and he's got that strength and power in his hind legs again, and he's begging and getting treats and greeting strangers and making them smile and doing all the things he loves. Getting in the water and getting his paws wet and all that stuff. And like I said, if there was a perfect spot for it to happen and perfect time for it to happen, that's when it was. As much as it breaks our hearts,
it does.
That we had to say goodbye. You know, they're not going to live forever.
Right.
A friend of mine, after it happened, sent me an email, one of my old podcast guests, and said that a veterinarian friend of hers told her that every time you get a pet, you're signing a contract to have your heart broken.
That's so true.
And it is so true, because
Youk was our probably 6th or 7th dog that we've had.
Yeah. And he was, you never want to say one was your favorite or anything like that, but boy, Youk was special.
He was in between us 24/7.
He was an author, still the best-selling author in the family.
Yes.
Sells more books than I do, and will continue to, I'm sure.
Right.
So he was like this larger-than-life figure.
And
people from all over the world, literally all over the world, reached out to send their condolences to us. And that, again, kind of gave us comfort to know
how much he was loved.
Yeah, he wasn't just a dog. He was just this...
He wasn't just a dog. He was our family.
He was just like this incredible being, this incredible soul that would bring happiness to anybody that he interacted with.
He could read,
he knew what people needed.
Our minds sometimes, and sometimes he would just need some of my hand signals to know what he was supposed to do.
Yeah, he was so special. So special, and we miss him dearly. And traveling is not the same.
No, it isn't. Living in the RV isn't the same without him.
We still love it. We still love the lifestyle. Don't get us wrong, but it's different. It's
very quiet.
It's emptier. It's quieter. Drop a piece of food, you actually got to bend over and pick it up. We'll continue to kind of evolve and deal with our grief as it hits us in waves, good days and bad days, even though, at the time of this recording, it's almost been a month.
And
by the time this is released, it'll be a little over a month.
We actually got his ashes back before we left the project,
which again kind of turned into that perfect timing and perfect storm. We had been...
So he's actually between us still.
He sits right in between us as we're traveling.
With his ashes. So it's been an adjustment. And we left
now that 3 has turned into 2.
We left the project and
left the project
a Saturday morning after the following week after.
Yeah, so it's like May 4th.
I think I have to look on my phone on this one.
We went to meet a friend of ours, Leo, Brian, and Miko, for breakfast. And had a great visit with her. It was a little short because of life. She had to get to a state track meet that her son was participating in. So we were just grateful that we were able to get in and visit with her early enough to spend some time and We stayed at the
Harvest
Corona
Host.
Museum, which is a Harvest Host. Beautiful spot, beautiful botanical gardens. There's a wedding going on the night we were there.
We stayed at a Schoolhouse Grill.
And then from there, we started to make our way up to Visalia, California. So we stayed at a place called the Schoolhouse Grill.
And at that point, I think is when we started. We were so off grid to a point that we didn't have any phone service.
Yeah. From that point on, we were in and out of service for quite some time.
So that was nice.
Made it to Visalia. We stayed at the KOA there for 3 days, and then had dinner with another one of my podcast hosts, Vanessa Ray, musician, has wonderful music. Spent some time with her and her husband. Made our way up to Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks.
We stayed
again, beautiful. Stayed in, did some boondocking, some dispersed camping on BLM land.
We stayed. We actually stayed right at the other side of the Golden Gate Bridge.
Yep, that was after that. We went from Sequoia and Kings Canyon to Yosemite. Stayed in a casino before Yosemite.
Did a lot of Harvest Hosts at that point, if not boondocking.
And then made our way, like Sandy said, to the Golden Gate Bridge, a little rest area right off the bridge, which is so cool. Got pictures, walked on the bridge the next morning. It was
a windy, foggy day, which I think that's pretty much how it always is.
And then we, that morning before we started to head up the Pacific Coast Highway, we got together with another friend, Mana Saitena, who's the drummer for Michael Fronte and Spearhead. I've had him on the podcast twice, and he's just, again, awesome human being. We parked at a little park just below his house. He came down and met us, and we walked up to his house. Had lunch with him. His wife came home.
Really nice get together.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Chat, just sit, relax, and enjoy.
From there,
nature.
We made our way up the PCH. Stopped at all kinds of switchbacks, stayed in a bunch of casinos, made our way up into the Redwoods, which was just incredible. And
but the Sequoias and Kings Canyon was really neat.
Yeah. All those national parks we
actually
had in
Yosemite
California were so cool.
Yosemite was beautiful too. They were all.
The national park system is a treasure in the U.S. for sure. So we finished up in the Redwoods, and then the next time we talk to you guys will be somewhere in Canada. So we're gonna make our way up to Long Beach, Washington, to see a friend for a couple days, and then make our way over to meet our friends in Great Falls. So the next podcast that her and I do together will be once that band of gypsies has embarked on our 3.5-month adventure into Alaska. So. Our grandson Alex is meeting us out there, and he's bringing along his pup, so we will actually have a 4-legged companion with us for 3.5 months. So certainly not a replacement for Youk, but will be nice to have a canine friend around for some of those adventures that we go on. So like I said, it's going to be different for us. We're going to continue to adjust. We're still loving the lifestyle, but boy, is it different.
It is definitely.
Very different. Hard. So that's kind of a wrap on this one. I know anybody out there who's lost a pup knows what we're going through, and we thank everyone who reached out to us, whether it was phone calls or text messages or whatever it was. We thank you so much for that support.
Yes, thank you.
Because that makes it easier.
It does. It means a lot.
Yeah. So for those out there listening, be sure to check out my other blogs and podcasts. We just kicked off a new program called the Pay It Forward program. If you're interested, you go on the website. You can buy a book that will be donated to a library or a person or something in our travels. And it's a way for you to kind of pay it forward and keep the stories that we tell moving throughout there, creating that ripple effect. So that information's on the website as well. So check that stuff out at journeymymotherson.com. And as always, just have safe travels. And if you got a pup, give him
an extra
hug today.